welcome back inside the cave on this Tuesday morning. And every Tuesday at 7:25, we call on Tom Crawford from the Crawford Podcasting Network and a Fanatic fan. And I know you were at a game last night, Tom, and saw a pretty good one.
Yeah, Michigan basketball, Dusty May's team still turns the ball over early in the game too often. I mean, they sometimes start these games, the last few outings, going to turnover a minute, but then they adjust, and it's an issue. But man, this team's got a lot of talent, Pat. It's a legitimate 11 deep rotation. Now that'll probably get pared down a little bit, but a lot of talent. And when you have that many moving, that much of a moving parts kind of scenario, it takes a little while and you have to be patient, as Dusty said last night. But very high ceiling, the sixth biggest team in the entire country. They got some bigs, and they're going to be fun to watch.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but let's talk Michigan football. A must-win for the Wolverines this weekend against Northwestern if they have any hopes of going to a bowl game. And, of course, they finish up with Ohio State. So what's your thinking? Michigan going to be able to do it this week?
I hope. I mean, you got Northwestern at home. But the thing about Northwestern is, Northwestern to me, since the Pat Fitzgerald days, and prior to that even, maybe Pat Fitzgerald days when he was a player, they will play a full game. They're like an armed services academy. They're not going to give up for 3 hours. And Michigan better be ready because they're not very good. And offensively, they're really, really bad. And defensively, sometimes in the secondary, they look really bad. So, Sherrod's got to get this team together, got to get bowl eligible. You need those 15 practices to develop this, which is another de facto spring practice. And then in the off season, he's going to have to tweak this coaching staff. There are a ton of, situations going on in college football right now. There's been firings, there's been coordinators that have been fired, there's been a lot of movement going on. And so there's opportunities for position changes, and I think Sherrod Moore's going to have to look at his staff to figure out who's going to be his staff, especially approaching December 4th. That's signing day. Those signees got to know, okay, who's my quarterback coach? Who's my offensive coordinator? Before they're going to commit. That's just realistic. And so finding out who that staff is job one when this regular season ends on November 30th, a week from Saturday.
Well, you see some rumblings, Tom, online yesterday. 2 former Michigan staffers let go from their jobs, Don Brown and Biff Pogge. And, of course, right away people are like, do you think they'll bring them back? How likely is that they come back to Ann Arbor in some capacity?
It's funny. We were talking about that at the basketball game. The Don Brown joke. Hey, he's available. Don Brown, the nightmare DC in the latter stages.
Right.
Because there was so much press coverage and setting the secondary up to fail. We refer back to that 2018 Ohio State game more than anything. But Biff Pogge was, he was Harbaugh's right hand man, for a while, and he goes to Charlotte and doesn't work out. But, in college football, people don't realize for a Division I coach at the FBS level, Division I level, let's just say you coach for 30 years, on average, you're going to get fired 5 times.
Yeah.
That's reality. And people don't realize that. It's a very unstable profession. It's you know that going in. But, it's none of it surprises me, and so who knows what Sherrod's going to do, but I think he's going to be forced. If this offense looks terrible against Northwestern, or if they happen to lose the game, which God forbid, there's definitely going to be changes on the staff. I think Sherrod is going to at least be a 2-year guy, and and see what happens, see how he bounces back, just like Harbaugh was able to after 2020. But he might be forced to make some changes.
Well, last week Ohio State scourged Northwestern 31-7. What kind of issues does Northwestern bring to this game against Michigan?
Well, I said they're gonna run the football. They're gonna be tough physically, and when you looked at that Ohio State game, that was so weird at Wrigley Field. I mean, it was like 95% Ohio State people. But man, they scored early. They ran the football. They ran the ball on Ohio State. And if they run the ball in Michigan, Michigan's in trouble. Any team that runs the ball in Michigan, Michigan's defense is on its heels. And Michigan State did that in the first half, and they can't allow. That concerns me. If Northwestern can't run the football against Michigan, then Michigan's going to be just fine. That's almost like the ultimate factor. But they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this. Of course, the last time they had the 2-week thing, that didn't work out very well. But it'll be, the more interesting thing is, how is this crowd going to be on Saturday? That's the thing that I'm going to look at, because you're coming up a national championship year. Now you're trying to get to 6 wins. You're certainly not going to get an opportunity, I don't think, against Ohio State of getting another win. And so this is an important game. But how are the fans engaged? Are they going to be sitting back ready just to unload with naysayer negative reactions if things go wrong? Or are they going to be supportive? That's almost the thing I'm looking at the most.
Well, it's not going to be the most pleasant day on Saturday. High 30s forecasted for kickoff. So the quote-unquote fair weather fans may stick either at their tailgates or not show up at all.
Yeah, they won't. They won't show. In that student section will be a late arriving, early departure, and maybe not show at all. So, yeah. But that's fine. I mean, that just goes with the territory. I mean, you can bring those fans back. I mean, Dusty May in basketball, he said that at the start of the season, he told his team, look, this place is going to be half filled at best, and that's fine because we're going to earn them. We're going to get sellouts when the Big Ten season starts, and they had a sellout against TCU, so you can't worry about the fans. You just got to worry about your team, and Sharon's got a lot to worry about with this team, that's for sure.
Well, I think Sharon is more worried about not having those 20 extra practices to get some of his younger players some playing time.
Yeah, it's like when I'm watching, everybody's trying to decipher, what the hell went wrong? How did this team get so bad so quick? But I'm looking at watching the Chargers the other night, or Sunday night, playing the Bengals, and, you got Jesse Mentor, the DC, who is, everybody just raves over him as one of the hottest defensive coordinators in the NFL. Mike Elson's the D-line coach. Klink is a secondary coach. Ben Herbert, the strength and conditioning coach. Jim Harbaugh, the head coach. And you take all those were your A game. That's your A team off that staff last year, and they're all gone. And plus, you lose 18 to 22 starters. It shouldn't be a real head scratcher why Michigan has fallen off, but to the degree they've fallen off and how they've played schematically and just the terrible quarterback play is what baffles Michigan fans.
All right, let's talk something more positive here. Let's talk about Michigan basketball. Pretty good game last night. Again, the turnovers, as you said at the beginning of the broadcast, kind of their nemesis here. But, hey, they had 3 guys in double figures, 94-67 win, and they looked really good in the second half, cut down the turnovers, scored 50 points in that second stanza.
Yeah, they're scoring around 90 points a game. When you got a lot of players who played a lot of basketball, like Trey Donaldson, who played at Auburn, very prominent player there, and Danny Wolf and Black Gold. I mean, you got guys that have played a lot, and Amari Burnett, who is one of the lone holdovers from last year's team, who played at Alabama before he came to Michigan. You remember him last year. I mean, he is really a solid, great kid. I had a one-on-one with him at Media Day, and then Roddy Gale from Ohio State. You just got guys that are really experienced. And then L.J. Kaysen, this number 2, he wears number 2. This guy, a true freshman, scored 11 points in 16 minutes. He is, I call him the second coming of Karis LeVert. Now, maybe that's a little overstating, but, man, he's got a lot of his skill. He's just got a lot of moxie. He's very, very, very driven. Dusty said he'll be the first guy in the building tomorrow at Chrysler to to break down film and see how he can improve his game. I really like this team. I think, Stubbs, you said, extremely high ceiling, but has to be patient. And I really don't know how good they're going to be. They got a couple of big name opponents coming in December. You got Oklahoma and Arkansas. Arkansas is the 18th ranked team in the nation. You got Vodtech on the road down at that tournament in Fort Myers next Monday. You got some prominent teams, and then the Big Ten slate's going to be brutal. The Big Ten's going to be so good, and so I'm just super excited that we have a diversion from this football team. It's the opposite of last year, and but it's this Dusty May. People can say the things what they want to say about Ward Manuel, but I think he did a good job with getting this new basketball coach. I like this guy a lot.
Well, I know they're trying to find their identity and trying to find that one guy that's going to be the floor general out there. And I thought Trey Donaldson did a pretty good job of that last night.
He's probably the guy, the alpha dog, and we got to see practice a few weeks ago, and he stood out to me. But it's funny you talk about identity, because that question was brought up last night, and Dusty said, some coaching colleagues of his told him, you shouldn't know what your team identity is this, 3 or 4 games in. You shouldn't know. You won't know until maybe 10, 12 games in what the identity is. That's kind of a work in. But I do think, though, it's going to be they like to push the ball. They like to defend in your face. And and they're a way better shooting team than from the perimeter than they were last year. That's definitely an upgrade.
Tom, taking a look at Dusty May's recruiting, how important is it in your mind that U of M now has brought in the number 1 player in Michigan 2 years in a row?
Yeah, it's Trey. They had Fat last year, and Trey McKinney out of Orchard Lake St. Mary. He's a real deal. I saw him play in person last year, and he was at the TCU game last Friday night. So he's all in, and he's signed, and they got another kid out of New Zealand, and so Dusty, I think he's going to be a heck of a recruit. He's a young guy. I think 47. This is a young man's game as a coach in terms of recruiting and trying to navigate through the NIL and all this and transfer portals. It's a personnel game as much as anything, as much as scheme. So, he's doing well, and who knows how far it'll go. And that's the most exciting part is Michigan fans have hope so quick after only winning 8 games last year.
One other question from me, Tom. You alluded to the turnovers earlier in the segment. How much do you think that is on Coach May and the staff really trying to still find that rotation this early in the season and guys different combinations on the floor together maybe that don't practice together as much?
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. And it's funny, last night they brought in a few minutes in, they brought a fresh 5 in. I mean, it was like watching a church basketball game. They bring another 5 in. I mean, it was crazy. But you're right. I think that's a great point. That getting to know each other, because the turnovers, there's mishandled turnovers, and then there's and then passing the ball to somebody who's not open, thinking they're open, trying to thread the needle. That's kind of another category of turnover. And then there's that sloppy turnover, which has been the case with this team. A lot of one-hand push passes that, what are you doing here? And all of a sudden the ball's turned over. But things that can get cleaned up, things that are fixable. Dusty doesn't seem too worried about it. And then it's funny, after the TCU game, he said, when they had all those turnovers, I mean, he says, I'm starting to think I got these guys thinking about it too much. It's in their head. I think that will be taken care of. This is not a John Beilein team where you got 6 or 7 turnovers a day. And Beilein would come in there if you had 8 turnovers, he'd be upset. A really clean team. It's not like that, but it could get a lot better. And this team is so big and has so much talent. They got that sucker down to 10 or 12 turnovers as opposed to 18 to 22. what a huge difference that would be.
Well, you talk about John Beeline. He was on the Big Ten Network. He was almost giddy about this Michigan team. Very impressed with him. And I like the combination of Golden and Wolf in the lineup. I mean, that's going to be awful tough to defend down the stretch.
Well, you look at the last 5 minutes of that TCU game Friday night was a tight battle, but you had Danny Wolf and Vlad in there, and then you had Sam Walters in there, who was pretty tall. He was up there 6'10", and that big tall front made those shots that TCU had, easier shots earlier in the game, but really more difficult at winning time. And all of a sudden, that game ended up double-digit win, kind of a comfortable win for Michigan. So I like it. Hey, you can't coach. Size is size. It's a glaring thing, and it's a good thing as long as you can keep these guys mobile and defending.
Tom, we're out of time here on Inside the Cave, but we want to remind folks that they can hear all of your podcasts. Tell them how they can get to it.
Yeah, Tom's Take Community, Pat. All one word, Tom's Take Community. If you go out to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it, really appreciate that. A lot of Michigan content. We got some stuff from Dusty last night and some highlights from the game, talking about some Michigan football, Michigan basketball, heavy on that and some other things. So appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure. What are the highlights of the week on Tuesday morning, Pat?
Tom, give us a quick score on the Northwestern game.
Do I have to? I'm going 24-13 Michigan.
All right, 24-13. All right. We'll take it. Tom, we'll see you.
A W. Go.
We'll see you in the box on Saturday.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Tom Crawford from the Crawford Podcasting Network, our guest here at Inside the Cave. Don't go away.